Hi everyone, back with an update on the Sling TSi build. So finally, after a couple of months of the aircraft being at the paint shop, it is now ready to get back to some actual building. The paint has done a really good job, but it has taken its time. It has taken some time. It's been a lot of work trying to get the finish that we were hoping for. And on the day of moving the aircraft, we had quite a big trailer, something that you normally fit a van in. That's what's needed because the wheelbase is quite wide on the TSi. It doesn't fit, it's wider than a standard car. The finish came out quite good. The red and the silver, and the registration has been put on by using vinyl. So it was now back at the hangar and starting to do the final assembly to in a certain extent. So I've kind of reorganized my hardware vault for all the wing and empennage installation hardware, so for most of the final assembly steps. So the plan is to work from the back to finish all the empennage section first, and we'll leave the wings to the very end, so that once the wings are on, it's a proper aircraft. It takes a full hangar. The upholstery is all there, pretty much ready. The seats, it just needs to be velcroed onto the actual seats. They've been painted as well. The center console was already in. Obviously, mine being a base kit, I had to get the insides of the canopy painted, which was difficult, but I got it done. And yeah, and all the other bits, the cowlings have been painted as well. I'm just not going to try it on many times because every time you put it on, it will scratch the paint a little bit. So I will leave that till the very end. There's a few things in the brake fluid we need to complete. That's the brakes system, but other than that, most of the firewall forward stuff is done anyway. I've got on the tail section, as I mentioned, the vertical stabilizer and the rudder that needs to be mounted. The electrical connections are all quick fit connections, so should be quite easy, I would think, that step once it all lines up. Did some of the upholstery on the inside. This is quite a pretty easy stuff to do. The side panels, once you're happy with the panels. So on this one, basically you do the top and bottom panels at the back. These two, the top one is leather and the bottom one is carpet. So now then you've got that horizontal line between the two, and the front one, it comes already stitched from the factory, the carpet and the leather. So you just line up that line to match the rear too. So that was easy enough, and got all that stick. I'm using just carpet adhesive, standard one, works out quite well. These were quite a challenging step, in terms of the door latches, to try and get them to fit. Finally managed to get a really positive lock. You could really feel that as lock's gone on. Still have to put the rubber along the door, so that will add a little bit more stiffness to that locking mechanism. The right side was all pretty straightforward. On the left side, had a bit of an issue with how the doors were actually made. It wasn't made as you can see, the gap between the door and the canopy itself is quite wide, which meant the latch, we had to manufacture an extended latch, which was 10 mm longer than the standard latch. We machined that piece, and everything else fit. So it was just that latch had to be lengthened to match the rest of the thing. But yeah, and the covers, once painted, it's all well and good once it's on. And then it was time to fit the canopy windows and the rear windows. Ideally, you would like to do this step before you paint the canopy. So if anyone doing from a base kit, have them bonded before you paint, so you can mask up and paint right to the edge. Whereas I've had to be really careful, mask up as much so that every time you try you don't damage the paintwork. Plus it's very hard to achieve a really good finish now that it's already painted. I'm trying to work to that's something that's already there. So the tricky bit on this one is along where the latches. It's an awkward shape, so plan was to try and get that side, the bottom side, and that front corner and the front side, or the kind of lined up, and then slowly take off petty material on the other side. Also I've used went with a little bit of a chamfer all the way along, so that this thing sits flush and you can slide it a little bit and see where the fit is. So I think that it worked out well. We managed to get a good finish. It takes a lot of time. I think both canopy doors and the rear windows took me about 25 to 30 hours, with Nick also helping out. So yeah, it's quite a long job. It's a 2 or 3 days easily. And the main tool for trimming was a belt sander. It helps really well. And also we had this other tool which has got a kind of sanding drum at the end of it. Makes it an easy. It makes the trimming quite easy and straightforward. And once everything was trimmed to size, happy with the dimensions, basically had to mask around on the inside as well, so that when you apply the primer you get a nice line for the black outline of the primer. I would advise to use the fine line tape all the way along rather than just using masking tape. I tried this advanced masking tape, but there were a little bit of it still seeps through in some areas, so definitely recommend using fine line tape all the way along, and then the masking tape for the other side. And I had to do the window doors first, so that I could access from the back side, from the front and through that rear door, because once if you do the rear side, then you don't have much access from the inside, just to make sure everything is lined up. Yeah, and then once seeker cleaner, seeker activator, primer, and then the actual seeker flex itself, thin bead all the way along, and then bond it in, put pressure on multiple points, especially along the edges, so that it stays fixed. I think we left it for about 18 hours for it to cure properly, and it came out quite nice. It gives I also did trim my windshield, so the windshield is quite a tricky thing. I haven't fully finished that. Got the front edge trimmed to size. I've still got quite a lot of overhang at the very front. Sorry, the rear edge of the windshield is trimmed to size. The front is still overhanging, so once when the time comes to fit it, we'll trim the thing to the final size. Obviously there's no coming back if you go a little bit too much, so it's always tricky with these kind of things. Especially it's quite a complicated shape, so if you take too much off the back or the front, it won't fit, so you have to kind of take equal amounts from both sides. So yeah, slowly work towards that. So that's kind of the next step for me once the panel's all mounted. Yeah, got quite enough overhang to push it back, and this was when the right hand side was fully cured, and we took all the tape off, and as you can see, the lining, the fine line tape does a really good job of getting a really nice outline of that black all the way along, so you don't see any of the glue or any unevenness, and it came out quite good. And this was time when, after doing one side at a time, then I did the other side and bonded that in place and left it to cure overnight. From the inside as well, it's because we had masked all the inside as well, it came out quite nice. There was hardly any spillage onto the canopy. So I mean, yeah, it's best to have it have as much masked up, because especially the primer can easily run. It's quite a runny liquid, so when you're applying the primer, use a sponge and just gently dab along, or you only need a tiny bit at a time, because if you apply a little bit more, it'll just run straight down. So yeah, and so both windows done. Now it's time to finish up the insides, and then it's time to mount that windshield, and then we're pretty much there in terms of starting to think about moving it into the main hangar and try and get the wings mounted. So that's something in the next couple of weeks. So we're at a stage where it's kind of 90% done, 90% to go. So okay, so I'll hopefully keep more updates regularly now that I'm spending more time with the build. Alright, take care, everyone. Bye.